In the deepest, darkest corner of an underground facility, a place that officially doesn't exist, Commander Vance stood before a marvel of the cosmos. Encased in reinforced plasteel, an alien creature, frail and ethereal, was held captive. Its skin shimmered with a faint bioluminescence, a silent protest against the cold, sterile environment of the lab. Vance, a man whose ambition was as sharp as the lines etched on his face, watched with an unwavering gaze. He wasn't seeing a living being. He was seeing the future of warfare, the key to ultimate power. "Begin the extraction," he commanded, his voice echoing slightly in the vast, silent chamber. A robotic arm, precise and unfeeling, descended from the ceiling. At its tip, a needle gleamed under the stark laboratory lights. The arm moved with unnerving steadiness, positioning the needle over the alien's slender arm. There was no hesitation, no moment of pause. The needle plunged into the creature's translucent skin. A silent scream seemed to emanate from it, not a sound, but a wave of psychic anguish that made the technicians flinch. The creature's blood, a mesmerizing, glowing sapphire liquid, began to flow. It wasn't just blood, it was liquid energy, pulsing with an otherworldly light as it traveled through a series of tubes and into chilled, reinforced vials. The blue glow illuminated Vance's face, his eyes reflecting the shimmering fluid. He saw victory. He saw invincibility. With each drop extracted, the alien's own light dimmed, its body convulsed. A silent agony that was far more disturbing than any audible cry. The vials filled one by one, a collection of captured starlight, each one a promise of a new breed of soldier. Vance observed the process with a detached clinical focus. The creature's suffering was a necessary, acceptable cost for the power he was about to unleash upon the world.
Ow.
The last vial clicked into place, full. Extraction was complete. The alien slumped in its restraints, its glow reduced to a barely perceptible flicker, its body still. Phase 2 was ready. In the adjacent chamber, a line of soldiers stood at perfect attention. These were the elite, the best of the best, handpicked by Vance himself for Operation Chimera. They were monuments of human discipline and physical peak, their faces stoic, their bodies honed into weapons. They had been told they were receiving an advanced performance enhancer, a next-generation combat stimulant. They had no idea they were the first test subjects for a power not meant for mankind. Vance entered the chamber, holding a single, gleaming vial of the blue serum. The liquid swirled within, a tiny galaxy in his hand. He approached the first soldier in line, a mountain of a man named Corporal Thorne. "Ready, Corporal?" Vance asked, his voice steady. "Born ready, sir," Thorne replied, his gaze fixed forward, unflinching. Vance raised the injector, the needle filled with the alien's life force, pressed against Thorne's neck. With a soft click, the serum was discharged. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, the transformation began. It was instantaneous and violent. A network of neon blue lines erupted across Thorne's skin, tracing his veins like a living circuit board. His eyes snapped wide open, the pupils dilating until only the whites remained. A choked gasp escaped his lips, his body beginning to tremble uncontrollably. He wasn't in pain, not at first. It was a surge, an overwhelming flood of raw, untamed energy. He could feel every muscle fiber igniting, his senses sharpening to an impossible degree. He could hear the hum of the ventilation system from 3 floors above, see the microscopic dust motes dancing in the air. It was intoxicating. A grin spread across his face. Vance moved down the line, methodical and efficient. One by one, he injected his elite soldiers. The scene repeated itself with each man, veins glowing blue, bodies trembling, gasps of shock turning into grunts of exhilaration as the alien power coursed through them. They were becoming gods, or so they thought. Vance watched his super soldiers come to life, a proud smile touching his lips. He had done it. He had created the perfect weapon. His vision was finally a reality, but the euphoria was short-lived. The power that surged through them was an untamed ocean, and their human bodies were merely leaky boats. Corporal Thorne was the first to break. The energy that had felt so intoxicating moments before became an unbearable torrent. His grin twisted into a grimace of agony. The power was rewriting his very DNA, and his body was fighting back, tearing itself apart from the inside. A scream ripped from his throat, a sound so guttural and inhuman that it silenced the entire lab. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated torment, echoing the silent agony of the alien creature. His body began to contort. His spine arched backward at an unnatural angle, the sound of cracking bone masked by his horrifying cries. His fingers elongated, the nails thickening and sharpening into vicious, dark claws that tore through his combat gloves. His fellow soldiers watched in horror, the power in their own veins beginning to simmer and boil with a similar, agonizing intensity. One by one, they succumbed. Their screams joined thorns, creating a symphony of terror. Their human forms warped and twisted. Jaws unhinged, teeth grew into fangs, and their eyes, once filled with human discipline, became hollow voids of burning blue light. They were no longer soldiers, they were monsters. Chaos erupted. The first transformed soldier lunged at the nearest technician, its claws tearing through flesh and bone with sickening ease. The lab, once a symbol of order and control, became a slaughterhouse. Alarms blared, red lights flashing across scenes of absolute carnage. The newly made creatures, driven by primal rage and unbearable pain, tore through the facility. They were faster, stronger, and infinitely more savage than any human. The remaining soldiers who hadn't been injected tried to fight back, their bullets ricocheting harmlessly off the monster's newly hardened skin. Commander Vance stood frozen, his perfect vision crumbling into a nightmare before his very eyes. The pride on his face had been replaced by stark, abject terror. This wasn't victory. This was an apocalypse of his own making. He had sought to create super soldiers, but had only succeeded in breeding demons. The sounds of tearing metal and splintered bone filled the air as his creations dismantled everything he had built. Then, darkness. A cascade of sparks fell from a ravaged control panel, and the main power grid failed. The lab plunged into an oppressive blackness, the blaring alarms dying with a final mournful wail. For a moment, there was only silence, broken by the wet, guttural breathing of the things in the dark. Then, the emergency lights flickered on, casting long, dancing shadows. In the strobing red light, Vance saw them. His superhumans, now grotesque parodies of their former selves, were surrounding him. Their blue eyes burned in the dark, fixated on their creator. They were closing in, their claws scraping against the metal floor. Vance stumbled backward, his back hitting the plasteel wall of the alien's enclosure. He was trapped. He looked from the approaching monsters to the creature inside the chamber. The alien, drained and weakened, had lifted its head. Its own faint light was gone, but its large, dark eyes were open, watching. There was no malice in its gaze, no triumph. There was only a profound, ancient sadness. It watched as the men who had tortured it were about to be destroyed by the very power they had stolen. In the flickering red gloom, the monsters loomed over Vance. The lead creature, what was once Corporal Thorne, let out a low growl, a sound that promised a world of pain. Vance closed his eyes. The last thing he saw was the silent, knowing gaze of the captive alien, a silent witness to the spectacular failure of human ambition. The screaming began, but this time it was his own. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more content like this. See you next time.